Welcome back to Monster Tamer, a 2D Pokemon-like RPG created Phaser 3. Previously, we went ahead and reviewed our new Catching Monsters feature, and we started loading in our new assets that we'll be using in our game. If you missed the previous videos, there'll be links in the video description to the source code for this point, as well as the complete source code for this video. There'll also be a link to the previous videos if you'd like to catch up, so let's get started. So now we load in our assets, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start working on updating our item and our monster models to support our new feature. And so for our items, what we're going to want to do is we want to go ahead and add support for a new item type, and that's going to be a capture type so we can capture monsters. But in addition to this, we're going to add a new category field, so in that way we can have multiple items of one category that we'll be able to support. So as an example, if we take a look at our items JSON file real quick, we'll see currently we have this effect heal 30. And so this is telling us what we need to do in our game to handle this. However, if we ever want to add in another potion type, like maybe a super potion that could heal 60, we would have to look at the effect for each of these to figure out what to do. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add a new category that will just be like heal or capture, and then that way we can have different logic to do different things depending on what that category is. And so this is going to be helpful, like in our battle state machine, so that we can handle our different item categories and react accordingly. Likewise in our inventory scene as well. Just as an example, when we try to use an item from our world scene, we want some items to be usable and other ones not to be usable. A good example is like our damaged ball. We'll only want to be able to throw that while we're in battle trying to capture a wild monster, versus if we're on our world scene and we're looking at our bag, we want to be like, hey, you can't actually use that item right now because there's no monster to capture. And we'll be able to reuse that for other items later on. And so to go ahead and start adding support for this, let's go ahead and jump over to our typedef.js file. And the first thing we're going to do is let's come down to our item type definitions, and this is we'll go ahead and add in our details. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add a new item effect. And so after our heal 30, we're going to go ahead and have capture, and we're just going to do 1. And then for our value, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing. All right, so what this is going to represent is when we have a capture 1 effect, this is going to be like us using the weakest type of ball for capturing a monster. And so later on, if we want to add support for a better ball, all we'd have to do is change our value here, and then we could use that different value to know how it's going to impact our ability to capture a monster. So just as a basic example, let's say our damaged ball only gives us a 30% chance of capturing a monster if they're at low health. Maybe a better ball, so like our capture 2, that could give us like a 50%, or if it's like a master ball type, maybe like the 3, it would be 100% catch rate no matter what. And so depending on what this item effect is, that's going to affect our possibility to capture a monster. So in addition to our item effect, we want to go ahead and add in that new category. So what we'll do is we're going to come down to our item definition. So after our description, let's go ahead and copy this property here, and let's go ahead and add in our new category. And so for this is going to be a new type, and this is going to be an item category. We'll define that in a second. We'll go ahead and call this category. And so this, we'll go ahead and change our description to be the main category of this item. And we'll just say healing, capture, etc. And so this is just going to be a way for us to group our items together. And now, so for our category, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new const, kind of like we did our item effect here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy these 2 blocks of code here, and we'll go ahead and paste them along with our items. And so we're going to go ahead and change this to item category, and we'll go ahead and paste that type down here, and then we'll go ahead and change our const variable to be item category, and we'll go ahead and update that up here as well. Now, so for our category, we want this to be more generic, and so we're just going to go ahead and do heal, and we're going to go ahead and do capture. All right, so with our new category, what we'll want to do is let's jump over to our items JSON file, and let's go ahead and add that here. And so what we'll do is right above our effect, let's go ahead and add in category. And what we'll go ahead and do is we're just going to do heal. All right, so the next thing we'll do is we're going to go ahead and add in a new item, and it's going to be for our damaged ball. So let's go ahead and copy this block of code here. Let's go ahead and paste it. We'll go ahead and give this an ID of 2. And for our name, we're just going to call this damaged ball. And now for our description, we'll go ahead and change this to be a damaged ball that can be used for capturing monsters. And now for our category, we want this to be capture. And for our effect, we're just going to go ahead and do capture 1. So now we have our new item in our raw JSON. Let's go ahead and jump over to our data manager so we can go ahead and give some of these items to our player when we start our game. So if we come up to our data manager, let's go up to where we have our inventory and let's copy this here and we're going to add another item. And so for our item here, we'll do our ID of 2 and let's go ahead and bump up our quantity and we'll go ahead and change our quantity. We'll just go ahead and do 5. So now what we should be able to do is in our game, if we go ahead and do new game, if we go ahead and go into our bag, we should see that our new item type is now visible in our game. So we can see our damaged ball with our description and our quantity that were provided. All right, so the last thing we need to do for our data model updates is we're gonna go ahead and update our monster ID field to go ahead and be a string. And so if we jump over to our monsters JSON file, currently we have 2 IDs for our monster. We have ID and we have monster ID. And so monster ID is meant to represent the unique ID of a monster family type. So as an example, all Iguanodonts in our game should always have a monster ID of 1. And so that's like their Pokedex reference number. And so that will always be the unique ID for that type of monster. Versus the ID, this is our unique identifier for each unique Iguanodonte. And so as an example, if we spawn a new Iguanodonte in our game, it could be like 1, 2, 3, 4. And if we spawn another one, it could be 4, 5, 6. And so what we want to do is we want to make our ID a string. So then that way we can go ahead and use a GUID or a unique identifier for this. And so our GUID is just going to be a very long string that's going to be very unique for each monster we want to go ahead and spawn. And if we go ahead and leave it as a number, then we need to worry about generating this as a number, incrementing this, and it's just much more common to go ahead and use a thing like a string when we want that unique ID. And so go ahead and make this change. What we'll do is let's jump over to our type definition file. And for our monster model, we're going to go ahead and update our ID here. And we're going to go ahead and change this to be a string. So back in our monsters JSON file, we just need to go ahead and update all of our monster IDs here to go ahead and be a string. All right, so with those changes, we need to do one more change, and that's going to be in our data utils. If we go ahead and jump over to our data utils file, currently we have one method for getting a monster by their ID, and currently we're using the monster.id, and we're providing that to this here. And so for this method here, we're using this like in our data manager. We want to go ahead and populate our monsters, our starting monsters in our game. We're also using a few other spots. And so what we're going to want to do is instead of using our monster.id here, we're going to want to go ahead and use our monster ID to grab that particular monster type. And so when we add our initial party, we're going to want one Iguanodonte added to our party, and we'll need to use this ID to grab that. And so to do that, we're just going to change this from ID to go ahead and be monster ID. All right, so with that change, we should go ahead and test our changes and make sure everything's still working in our game. So we'll go ahead and do new game. Our game should launch without any issues. We shouldn't see any errors in our console. If we jump over to our monsters, we should see our 3 monsters get added to our party without any issues. If we go ahead and go into our monster summary, we should still see our monster details. Let's go ahead and go back, go to our bag, and let's go ahead and save, and we'll go ahead and refresh. Let's try loading our game, and everything should still work. All right, so before we wrap up, we have one more change we need to make, and that's going to be in our monster party scene. So let's go ahead and jump over to our monster party scene class. And what we need to do is we need to go ahead and update our logic for we're handling our various item types. So because we added in a brand new item effect type, we need to go ahead and update this logic here in our case statement to handle that type. And so for the time being, we're just going to do, we'll add in our case, let's add in our item effect, and we'll go ahead and do capture 1. All right, and then so what we'll do for this item is we're just going to add a break statement. And so what we're going to do is once we update our inventory scene to be able to handle our various item categories, then what that's going to do is we'll make sure before we come to our monster party scene, we're only passing item categories that we can actually use. And so that's going to be like our heal items. And so what we're just going to do is we're just going to add a comment that we shouldn't be able to use this item from this scene. And so we're just going to do, these items should not be usable in this scene. All right, with that brings this video to an end. In our next video, we're going to start working on adding in our new ball class, which is going to have things like our animations for throwing our ball in our battle scene. So as a reminder, there's a link in the description of the video to the complete source code for this video, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the content. If you did enjoy the video, please consider liking the video and hitting the bell icon to be notified when the next video in the series is released. For more Great Phaser 3 content, please see the links on your screen now.